Hey guys, my name is Rob. Welcome to Kinetic Rugby League. In this video, I'll be giving you my NRL Round 14 predictions. So to recap last week, unfortunately, 0 out of 5. This week, I'm in Turkey, so different setup. I'm using my phone. I can't look at the team list as I normally record, so this won't be the same as the usual videos. I've written down a couple notes for each of the games, but we'll crack on with the first game of the round. So kicking things off, we have the Dragons taking on the Tigers. A few points for me on this one, so I'll keep all these games kind of short and sweet. Now, there's no Hunt for the Dragons, of course, no Lomax named in the team list this week. They seem to do just fine without them against the Panthers. I think players like Galvin on the side of the Tigers could be huge in this game, could be really detrimental. But I think given how the Tigers dealt with still a fairly strong-looking Panthers team that I think would still beat this Tigers team, I feel inclined enough to go with the Dragons. It is understandable that some of the guys from Origin, so Hunt and Lomax, haven't been named given the short turnaround. They'll have no time whatsoever to recover, whereas teams like the Panthers, they've got plenty of time to bring players back in. But yeah, I think there are still individuals in that team. I think Cal Flanagan can still take on some responsibility for the Dragons. Tyrell Sloan can create a lot of things individually. And players like Liddell, number 9, can still create moments. So I think given the lack of organisation in that Tigers team, generally speaking, and I think the way that we at least saw the Dragons could deal with missing key players, and they'd still got a few key players in there as well, I'm more than happy to back the Dragons. So I'm going to take the Dragons to win 1 to 12 points. Next up, we have the Titans taking on the Rabbitohs. The Titans, for me, were brilliant against the Broncos last time out. There are a few issues with the Broncos, I must say, and defensively, obviously, the Titans conceded a ton of points, way too many points. But still, a cracking performance and throwing the ball around a lot, really, to open up the Broncos' defence. On the side of the Rabbitohs, there's new life in that team. There really is. I wouldn't say Latrell looks like a brand new player, but I think the kind of vibe and culture around the Bunnies at the moment kind of feels like, right, we get it. We're past all that. We're focused on the goal, which is top 8. And I think there's a slight change. There's a slight difference in the Bunnies team at the moment. There's a different energy. And Latrell does look slightly different, but having Mitchell in there, Whiten, Walker and Cook, which I think is the best spine that they've got available against a Titans team that defensively still needs work. I think with the Bunnies forward pack and still some changes to the spine that the Titans need to deal with. Yes, they did well last time out. I think the Rabbitohs might have this one, but I think at least every one of the last 6 games, maybe 7 games that the Titans have played, I think it's all been within 1 to 12, I should say. And the games that they've lost have all been 1 to 12. The last 5 games that they lost. So, given the Rabbitohs aren't playing that great at the moment, but I think they'll do enough, and the Titans have been keeping it fairly close recently, I'm going to go with the Rabbitohs to win 1 to 12 points. Next up, we have the Cowboys taking on the Warriors. First of all, I think the difference in these two teams is that Clifford can probably adapt better to the number 6 role than Harris Tavita can. I think Harris Tavita played in the halves a couple times for the Warriors before his retirement, and maybe sometimes for Samoa in the World Cup, but I think typically came on as the second hooker off the bench. So I think Clifford is probably more accustomed to that role and playing more frequently recently over the last couple of years will acclimatise better. I think the Cowboys' back line, it could be a little bit weak with Purdue in there, so there could be an area for the Warriors to really target. But I think the Cowboys' forwards, I think compared to the Warriors, I know there's Adam Fanua-Blake in there, but overall, if you look at the two prop forwards, the 2 players on the edge in the second row positions, and at lock as well, I think the Cowboys should be fine in the forwards. The only issue for me in the back line, as I said, is Purdue, so I think the Cowboys should be fine at spreading the ball around. You've still got Drinkwater. You've then got Clifford in there, who I think is decent enough. Townsend, who can control things. Keegan Game is off at times. But I think the Cowboys overall should be okay. But again, because there's a little bit of a question mark, and this Warriors team, with the changes they've made to the backs, are a little bit of a sneaky team in some weeks. So I'm not entirely confident about the Cowboys, because they have scored plenty of tries, but defensively can be quite weak. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys to win 1 to 12 points. Next up, we have the Broncos taking on the Sharks. This one is a very interesting one for me. I think the Broncos were poor against the Titans. They were really, really poor. I know it was close in terms of scoreline. They put up a lot of points. Great. They spread the ball around well. That's what I expect of the Broncos. But the fact that they would take a 6-point lead, I think maybe they took an 8 or a 12-point lead, and then they were just thrown all around the place. The Titans just had to chuck the ball around a little bit, create a second phase. Broncos were done. Completely done. They just felt very weak to me. Very weak, and it was just so sad watching the Broncos try and defend the lead time and time and time again, because they just kept losing it. The Sharks against the Panthers especially, wow. Like, I can't believe I backed the Sharks in that one as well, but I thought it was, with fair reason. But to be completely demolished like that is a weird one. So I think these two teams at the moment are going through something right now. I trust the Broncos to put up more points than I do the Sharks. I think the Broncos have more holes defensively, which the Sharks will exploit. As long as they're creating second phases, chucking the ball around, attacking the edges, I think the Broncos are open and they're there for the taking. But I think the Broncos are the better attacking team. With Walsh in there, with Mam in there, I think the Broncos would be okay to score enough points. I think it might be quite high scoring, but the Broncos will just about get it done. And being at home, I'll back them slightly. So I'm going to go with the Broncos to win 1 to 12 points. Next up, we have the Storm taking on the Knights. Now, previously, the Knights beat the Melbourne Storm. This was around the time that Storm put in some big wins, some clutch moments towards the end of games. I think both fullbacks for these guys are doing well, Farlogo and Armstrong. Both teams been putting in some solid performances. I'd say Armstrong slightly better. And the expectation on him is a little greater because of the player that he's replacing. Yes, Farlogo's replacing Pappenhausen at the moment, but Armstrong's trying to cover for Kalen Ponga, so there's a bit of a difference there. I think Wishart at number 6 is going to be interesting, but I think he's a very reliable player. He's been asked to come on with, say, 20 minutes to go early in the season, or like the first quarter of the season, and kind of change the game, bring a new dynamic, and he's done that. I think with Hughes in at number 7, less for him to worry about as controlling the game, and I think his run game, Wishart's run game, is pretty reliable, and he's doing a good job. So I think he'll do just fine. Katoa as well on that right edge. At second row, I think he's playing extremely well at the moment, and he's going to be really dangerous for the Knights' left edge defensively. So there's a few areas that Melbourne Storm can exploit. I think there are some moments where they can be in key positions and just completely drop the ball. Figuratively and literally, they will drop the ball. And also, the last time out, few minutes to go, great field position, chucking the ball around but doing absolutely nothing with it. I think the Knights, comparatively, a little bit like the Titans, have been keeping a lot of games close. The Knights have won more recently than they've lost, but pretty much the majority of their last 5, maybe 6 or 7 games have been within 1 to 12 points. I do think, even without Munster, Melbourne Storm are the stronger team here. The Knights still have a lot to work out because, yes, they're keeping games close, but they're not getting those results the same as Melbourne Storm. So I'm going to go with Melbourne Storm to win 1 to 12 points. Next up, we have the Panthers taking on the Seagulls. So Laurie is named at fullback for the Panthers, but there's a few players that are coming back in as there is a bit more time to rest for the Panthers players. So that includes Luai, To'o, and Martin. There's no Dylan Edwards available, unfortunately. On the side of the Seagulls, they've named Dali Cherry-Evans and Olakawatu, as well as Jake Trebojevic coming back into the squad. So this one could be quite interesting because we'll see if any injuries are picked up during State of Origin, which they could be. I think the player that's most likely to pick something up is probably Cherry-Evans on the side of the Seagulls, and probably To'o on the side of the Panthers, with a lot of carries out the backfield to probably get smashed into like 3 or 4 players. So that's going to be interesting to see. The Panthers took a 10-point lead against the Dragons and then just completely lost it, which is unfortunate. I think just going off these teams that are named, Assuming that everyone's going to be available, the Panthers on paper are the strongest team here. The Seagulls can make it interesting, and a couple times where they've matched up, the Seagulls defensively have been really strong. And when you've got a player like Daly Cherry-Evans, who's been around for an extremely long time, understands what a lot of teams try and do. And I'll always reference a game from last year. The Panthers still won it, but the Seagulls really took it to them. I think it was 12-all at half-time. Daly Cherry-Evans was jamming out the line, shutting down Nathan Cleary very quickly. Probably going to do the same this time out and force players like Cole and Laurie to have to think really quickly. Players with a lot less experience this season especially. Luai will probably be fine. But yeah, when you have somebody like Isaiah Yeo in there, I don't think you're going to be jamming onto him too much. And he's one of those key players in the Panthers team that can create things from nothing and is really great off the cuff. And can also carry really strong through the middle. Olakwatu back in the edges would be really helpful for them, but Martin on the other side is also helpful for the Panthers. I think overall the Panthers are still just about the stronger team, but I think the Seagulls can definitely make it interesting. I'm going to go with the Panthers to win 1 to 12 points. Finally, we have the Bulldogs taking on the Eels. The Eels have dealt with their coach loss very well, to be fair. But they've still shown good signs even without Clint Gutherson and Mitchell Moses, what I've seen. Like, it hasn't been perfect, but they've still, for me, just about been in there for the most part. So with having Gutherson back in there and Moses, it's a great sign for them, and they can now kick on for the rest of the season and start to make that push for top 8. I think the Bulldogs, without Addo-Carr, takes a little bit of sting out the attack on that left-hand side, because I know Burton likes to put those chip kicks in behind, sometimes early on in the tackle count, deep in their own half, to really exploit teams that, you know, for wingers that stay into the defensive line. The back line for the Eels looks pretty strong. They've got Blaise Talangi, probably the most inexperienced in that back line, I think. But I don't know, the Bulldogs can always be a tricky team against this Eels side, but I think given the culture around the Eels, yes, they lost the coach, but I think they've dealt with that very well. Gutherson and Moses back in there. Dylan Brown was playing pretty well at 7 for the most part. But yeah, I think with no Addo-Carr, and I think with just a couple of changes to that Bulldogs team, I like what the Eels can do here. I think it's very possible that the Bulldogs can come up with a win, but I like what the Eels can produce. And as I said, the back line looks strong enough for the Eels, and now having Gutherson, Moses and Brown, I think this is the part now where the Eels can really start to kick on. So I'm going to go with the Eels to win 1 to 12 points. So to recap my predictions for this week, I'm going to take the Dragons, Rabbitohs, Cowboys, Broncos, Storm, Panthers and Eels all to win by 1 to 12 points. So unfortunately, yeah, last week was shocking, absolutely shocking. I aim to turn things around drastically, but given there will be some origin effect this round, that could throw all of them all over the place again. But that is going to be it. If you have your own predictions, do let me know in the comments down below. Let me know your specific scores, and let me know how you got on last week. Also, plenty of people would have easily done better than I did. But that is going to be it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.